So looking at those four great failures, it seemed to me that it was worthwhile to think in terms of what nature has done. And what would nature require of us is the question I put in that 1978 paper. And so that then forces you to think, well, what was here? You know, and so out my window at the Land Institute, I could see wheat field that's dependent upon fossil fuel, dependent upon chemicals that human tissues have no evolutionary experience with. I could see soil eroding on the sloping ground, and meanwhile, we had about 100 acres of native prairie that had never been plowed, and here it was running on sunlight, actually accumulating ecological capital. And with species diversity, you have chemical diversity, therefore you don't have the epidemic. And the fertility was being sponsored by legumes as well as grasses, the warm season grasses that leak sugar into the rhizosphere of the plant, and where there are little bacteria that will use that energy source to fix nitrogen. So a wheat field, like all of the human agricultural enterprise, features the annual in a monoculture.
Right.
And the prairie features perennials in a polyculture or a mixture. So the question occurred, is it possible to build an agriculture using the prairie as an analogy, not as a template, but as an analogy? Is it possible to build domestic prairies and for us to take advantage of the natural integrities inherent within that system? So some basic questions had to be dealt with, such as can perennialism and high yield go together? Can a polyculture of such perennials out-yield a monoculture? Can we get that system to sponsor enough of its own nitrogen fertility? And can we deal with the problem adequately of insects, pathogens, weeds? So those became our sort of four basic principles guiding our research effort at the land. And it was extremely modest at first. It's still quite modest when you consider, you know, the USDA budget.
Did this focus on the prairie come to you like the light bulb over the head picture, or was it a slowly growing awareness?
I don't know. I've wondered about that. I've been asked that question, and I don't really trust any answer that I would give. Wendell Berry has done when we dedicated our greenhouse, he gave a history of humans looking to nature, and it's in the literary tradition among the poets, Shakespeare, Wordsworth, Pope, and so on. But he says then it goes underground, and then it pops up in the early 1900s, Liberty Hyde Bailey, The Holy Earth, and then after Liberty Hyde Bailey we have Sir Albert Howard and J. Russell Smith, The Tree Crops Guy, and then some others. Well, what's interesting, Wendell says that in the literary tradition, it's a series, not a succession. And the same way within the scientific tradition. It's a series, not a succession, but the succession is probably in the common culture. In other words, I was ignorant of the work, really, of Sir Albert Howard, much detail at all. I was ignorant, really, of Wordsworth, and I was ignorant of, well, somewhat ignorant of Liberty Hyde Bailey. And it could be that it was the succession was in the common culture and it just popped up. So in a sense, our work is part of a series. If we look at both the scientific and the literary tradition. But it's part of a succession if you look at it as coming out of the common culture. And there's something in me that prefers it having come out of the common culture.
I like that picture, too.